He said, for the first time, he said, you're on the command crew. Do you understand? You are fourth in command. You cannot abdicate your position. You are changing the minds of people across the world because for the first time, through you, we see ourselves. I think it's been one of the most remarkable things in my career, unexpectedly, that this one character that was a gift to me, and I didn't realize it at first from Gene Roddenberry, became this iconic image and inspired and impacted so many people's lives in positive ways. And I would have thought that once the series was ended, you go on to your next project, and maybe someone would say, oh yes, you do this and now you're doing that. But the thing for me was that I wasn't geared and inspired and enthusiastic in terms of television and films. I grew up in musical theater, and theater is my life, and suddenly this came, and I thought this would be a nice addition to my bio, my resume. I did this, and it only lasted 3 years, but how marvelous. And now I can get back to real work. But what happened during that time in creating Uhura and being responsible for that character and realizing that Gene Roddenberry had created something more than a fantasy, a science fiction oddity, and certainly I learned immediately it was not just it was not a kiddies show. Like a Lost in Space, which was charming and everything, was definitely, for children. And then as I got more involved in it, every script was better than the last one, seemingly, or as good as, or better. And I finally went to Gene's office one day, maybe after about the 5th episode, and I said, Gene Roddenberry, I know what you're doing. And he said, what, Nichelle? I said, you're writing morality plays. And Gene looked at me and he said, and you're writing morality plays in the 23rd century. And he looked up at me and he said, shh, they haven't figured it out yet. I think that says more about Gene and how he inspired us, each of us, to own those characters. Of course, I really owned Uhura because I named her. But I was allowed to develop her life and give her more than just the person that you saw, but what made her the person that you saw, that became that person that was chosen out of 23rd century, thousands of astronauts to go where no man or woman had gone before. There had to be a character base. And so I gave her a very strong culture, a very strong tribe that she came from the United States of Africa, who her parents were, both professional, loving, but demanding, only in expecting the best, and how that bolstered what was in the best that was in her. Not to that I have to please my parents, but that my parents and the people, the culture that I came from, Uhura, respected highly, and therefore expected and respected herself. She also had a wonderful sense of humor. She also had a wonderful voice. But on that bridge, on that command, as part of the command crew, she was always business. It was always about the mission. It was a work in progress, my seeing the value of the character in the context of Jean's vision of what we were doing, and non-interference of other intelligent life forms, protecting ourselves only if attacked, and then only to the degree that we were helping where help was needed, documenting because we were on an exploratory mission. We were the first to go forth in peaceful exploration. By the end of the first season, I thought, having said before that I thought this was an adjunct to my going on in musical theater, I thought I'd gotten all out of it. I still hadn't realized the magnitude of what Gene, of his vision, was meaning out there. I went to Gene, and by this time we'd been on the air, and I was getting offers, and my goal was Broadway. You know, the ultimate is starring in a major motion picture. Mine was starring on Broadway. You know, so it wasn't that, and yes, I would get scripts, and then suddenly my meatiest parts would be cut and so forth. It didn't bother me at first because I thought, oh, this is television, you know, they do that to everybody. I became aware there were other things that is like a fish out of water. My greatest joy was being on the set with my coworkers. They were we were a family. We were the most beautiful family in the world. I mean, it was just so, and I hated doing what I was going to do and go and tell Gene that the first season's over, I was going to leave and go back to my heart, and so where my heart lied. And Gene understood that because he knew my work had seen me in concert, he'd seen me in a supper club in Beverly Hills singing, and he knew that this was where I was coming from. And but he was upset, to say the least. He was not pleased, and he was hurt. And he said, don't you see what I was trying to do? I don't want you to leave. And he said, but I understand where you're coming from. He said, but listen, and he talked to me a little bit about what he wanted to do, to speak on the human condition. He wanted to speak from a voice of men and women as equals, people of all colors and ages, and this was an opportunity because he could put it in the 23rd century, and you could say, yes, by then maybe we will all be equal and get equal pay for equal work and all of that. And so, but mine was not a political dream. Mine was really focused on doing what I was born to do, to entertain to millions of people on Broadway in theater. And he said, it was on a Friday toward the end of the first season, and take the weekend and think about what we've talked about. You know I love you. If this is what you feel you have to do. So I'm going to save this cute little paper you've given me for resigning. Let's talk about it Monday, and if you still feel the way, go with my blessings. The next night was Saturday, and I had a commitment with, I believe it was the NAACP. It's always been a little confusing there for me, but NAACP fundraiser. And one of the producers of the event came to me and said, there's someone who wants to meet you, Miss Nichols. And he had a little look at his face that I didn't catch, you know. And he said, he says he's your most ardent fan, your biggest fan, your most ardent fan. And I said, oh, all right. And I thought, trekker, you know, somebody that they know there's a trekker and wants to meet me. And I stood up to turn around and meet the Trekkie. And there is this man, bigger than life human being, Dr. Martin Luther King. And I thought that Trekkie is going to have to wait. And and he's standing like as close as you are. And I said, and I walked over to him, and he started smiling and laughing. He says, I'm the Trekkie. And he says that, but I had only said Trekkie in my mind, you know, that the Trekkie was going to have to wait because I'm going to have this opportunity to meet Dr. Martin Luther King. And it was like he read my mind. He says, I'm the Trekkie. He says, I'm the biggest Trekkie on the planet, and I am Lieutenant Uhura's most ardent fan. I didn't even know how to say thank you. You know, I think at some point and he continued to talk, as I'm sure he had this kind of experience before. And he said, he went on to say how important Star Trek was, that images on television permeate the culture, either for the good or for the bad, and this is for the highest good. This man's vision, and he's going on to talk. And by this time, I regained my voice, and I said, Dr. King, thank you so much. I realize I'm involved with a very wonderful show and blah, blah, and I'm going to miss my co-stars. And Dr. Martin Luther King said, what are you talking about? And I said, well, I told Gene Roddenberry yesterday that I wouldn't be staying with the show because I'm going on. He said, you cannot go. You cannot leave. You have a responsibility. You had those tones, you know. And he was no longer joyous, and he became very serious. And he says, do you not understand what God has given you? You have an image. You are a person. You are going forth. You are the first. You have the first important non-traditional role, non-stereotypical role, the first. And he goes on, he says, for the first time, the world will see us as we should be seen. Not only as beautiful people, which we are, but qualified people, talented people, experienced people, leaders. And he went on to, I'm stunned by this man. And he said, for the first time, the world will see us as we should be seen, and not just tap dancers or maintenance, menial labor. He said, for the first time, he said, you're on the command crew. Do you understand? You are fourth in command. You cannot abdicate your position. You are changing the minds of people across the world because for the first time, through you, we see ourselves, what can be, what we are fighting for, what we are marching for. That dignity and the quality in which you have created your character, the dignity that you project, and so forth. And by this time, I'm not ashamed to say tears were coming to my eyes. You know, I was stunned. But I was listening. And he said, this man who envisioned this it's no fluke. You see what he's doing? Do you see what he's doing? And he said, we don't just like it because it's different or it's cute or your beauty. And then he is starting to tease me, you know. And he said, but you have a responsibility here. And he asked me about my children. I said, I have a son. And he said, this is for him. These are for all, not only the girls and boys. And Nichelle, he says, this is not just for people who look like us, who are fighting for our equal rights. He says, this is for everybody. These are people who don't look like us, who now see us in the manner equal and accepting it. You can't leave. And he says, I'm going to give you my card. This is Dr. his companion that always went with him. He says, we're going to keep up with your career. You cannot leave. And I said something about, I wish I had marched. He says, no. We've got people marching. We've got famous people marching. You're doing your job. Your job is to present the image of what we're fighting for, where we're going. Where we're going is where you are. 300 years from now, it starts now. There was a 12-year-old child, little boy, who looked on and he saw the communicator. He saw the communicator, he flipped it, he saw us flip it open and talk on it. And he said, wow, Dad, that's fantastic. Why can't we have that? It's like a telephone. They're talking to each other. We could talk all over the world. And his father said, well, son, someday we will. Maybe someday, when the technology builds to that, somebody watching it now will grow up and become an engineer or a scientist, and will figure out how to create that, invent it. He'll become an inventor of that, and it will be. And the kid said, yeah, Dad. And the kid grew up to become a scientist and an engineer and created the first cell phone. And so when I met him, he said, I owe so much to you because you flipped out that communicator and you were the communications officer. And I always, and then someone told me they also, because of the communication piece in Uhura's ear, became the Bluetooth. So I think that's really wonderful. But now you're talking about a young man in Hawaii who I can't imagine could he have been born? I guess he was. Just, maybe.
Well, I think his age and my age, we watched it in reruns.
And reruns. Mm-hmm. And I have only, I don't know this officially from this wonderful young man who, against all odds, decided he wanted to be the president of the United States. But quite a few people have assured me that they know firsthand that he has given Uhura credit for his ambitions, or he admired and loved Star Trek, and especially Lieutenant Uhura, and I think that is so magnificent. So, Mr. President, if you're listening, I am an ardent fan and supporter of yours, and you have done what even I thought was overly ambitious in this day and age, and you proved that the world is ready for the dream and the vision that Gene Roddenberry had, and the vision that was instilled in you, and that you did it with grace and ability and brilliance, that we will follow you, and I know that you will succeed. And I thank you. If it had this much to do with inspiring you, I am humbled and honored. And Hailing Frequencies Open. Oh, God. I mean, had we not kissed, it would have still been the first interracial kiss, because television is fantasy, you know, so there are a lot of people don't kiss that you see them doing that great thing. But in this case, everyone was quite aware that this was not just another kiss between two people working on a show, which happens all the time. It can happen, which is not unusual. Bill not only did that when we first kissed, and he took me in arm. It says in the script, and they kiss. So he took me arm and we kissed. And so the director goes, cut! And we're still kissing and we're laughing. We were good friends then. And we're laughing, And so but we turned to the director and went, what? That's good for the kiss is the end of the thing, fine. He comes to Bill. We're sitting side by side on this seat. Bill's here, he comes to Bill. And he's talking to Bill, like out of the side of his mouth, like I'm not there. You kissed her, you can't do it. Bill goes, what are you talking about? Because Bill is from Canada. Captain Kirk's from Iowa, Ohio, wherever he is from. But Bill is from Canada. He says, what are you talking about? He says, did they change the script? He gets the script and he says, and it says he takes her in his arms and they kiss. We kissed. So he goes, I know it's, and I says, guys, you guys straighten it out and I'm going to go to my dressing room, okay? And so I go to my dressing room and I'm sitting there going, it doesn't matter whether we kiss or not. The fact that he'll probably take me in there and turn away and they'll cut away, fine. I'm going like, but I understand better than Bill. He's talking about the whole interracial thing. Bill demands it, and Bill will not go far forward. He says, I can't, so he's getting an argument with him, which is how the way Bill gets his way. You're not going to get this scene done until it's Bill's way. But I'd never been part of that so much as now. And so suddenly they come to my dressing room and says there'll be a 15-minute break. And they've called Gene Roddenberry down. And with Gene Roddenberry come 3 suits from, I started calling them suits, and then everybody started calling them suits, but I don't think they were called suits before because they were absolutely alike, I said, why are the suits here? And Bill said to me, what suits? What are you talking about? I said, the guys in those identical suits over there. So those are the guys from the front from NBC. And he laughed and he started calling them suits. Gene came in and they went over to talk over there, and Gene went. Make a long story short, it went on for about a half hour. The AD is pulling his hair out because we're running out of time. If we go into overtime, that's golden time after 6 p.m. And which means we get paid too much, and triple. And so Gene says, okay. So the suits are saying, well, I guess we could have a problem. I don't see there's a problem. The script was already approved, And I think our audience is, so they're arguing both ways. So Gene says, okay, stop. Shoot it both ways. Shoot it with the kiss, shoot it without the kiss. We'll decide tomorrow morning at dailies. And so we began, Bill said, well, let's shoot it with the kiss. And so when I facetiously say Bill demanded 36 takes of the kiss to get it right, it's because we did about 6 takes before the director said, Bill, we've only got 10 more minutes. We've got to get the without the kiss. And Bill said, oh, I didn't. He said, I'm not son. Why didn't you tell me? Of course, we can get the kiss. Did we find? Each time we did the kiss, Bill would say, I feel that we weren't restraining enough. We should, fight it more because they have kinetic powers, and because I'm the captain of the ship. This is Uhura. I mean, we can just voluntarily. I understand. Now, I have lines in there in which I'm saying blah, 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 and talking to him, and now they're making me do this. And I was the one they always gave, Captain, I'm afraid. So I said, that's because I am expressing the fear of the entire 450 crew people on the ship who are afraid to express it. And it was, duh. And besides, I'm the only one with the lines. So I made a joke out of the whole thing. So now we do the 6 kisses until he stops us, and each one, he says, okay, let's, after each one, the director says, let's go to the no kiss. And Jim said, Bill said, and he'd get up and he'd walk and he'd say, it just seemed, he says, okay, let's do the kiss again. And we did the kiss again. So on the playbacks, the next day you go, and we finally did the no kiss. And we're looking, they're watching it on the screen, and there's the first kiss. You hear the director saying, Bill, we got to get to, Bill saying that, and people are going, and we get the kiss again. And then we get the kiss again. Bill walks over and takes him around his shoulder, and he says, you know, we've got to get the, because this is we do the kiss again, we do the kiss again, we do the kiss again, we do the kiss. The suits are there. I'm up here, Gina's up there, nearly, everybody's there that's pertinent to the kiss. And and finally says, the AD, you hear the AD say, if we don't get this, this is the last thing we can do. Or we're going into overtime, we've got to have permission to that, and la-da-da-da-da. Bill says, okay, the no kiss. So now we're looking at the dailies. We look at the kiss, 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 kiss. And now the no kiss. We do the scene. Bill takes me in his arms, and he goes, and we're fighting it, and we're fighting it, and we're fighting. And Bill leans me down like this, and he comes down and he looks up into the camera before they could cut. And the director never even saw it. He doesn't kiss me, it's not even close, and he looks up into the camera, and he crossed his eyes. The director says, as we're hearing the director say, cut, that's great, because he never even looked. He just knew that he didn't kiss me. He doesn't see it until the next day. He is fuming. There is such silence in the entire screening room. And then you hear you hear something, and then you cannot hold the laughter back. The suits stand up, and everybody freezes. Suits turn and look and said, do it with the kiss. The hell with the South, let them eat cake. Well, I said something like, if they can't take a joke, what they could do if they can't take a joke. And they walked out, and that is how the kiss went in. So the only one that was not a kiss, which we would have seen Bill obviously not touch my lips, and every other one was the kiss. So I don't know what Bill was talking about when he decided to write his memoirs, but his memoirs were cloudy, to be kind. Well, on the Lieutenant, you saw where Gene was coming from. On all the shows that Gene wrote for, Wagon Train and so forth, he originally called Star Trek Wagon Train to the Stars because of that. He explained that he wanted to write about the human condition, and especially in America. And we had come so far, we had to stop this matter of race differences, gender differences, because it was sapping the life and the strength and the respect out of America's greatness. And he was adamant about this. And so for every show he wrote for, and you see even in Wagon Train, several episodes when there were black couples who were treated with respect and faced problems, but faced them, all of them, with dignity, or calls your true colors. You know, if you're angry, if you're prejudiced, if you, whatever you're under great pressure, it will emerge. You know, no matter what you say, oh, I'm not prejudiced, oh, I don't dislike white people. If at a certain point, what you really are will avail itself, and the truth be known. It is only in facing these truths, as Jean felt, and I have always felt, it is only in facing these truths that we can face ourselves and then face one another as human beings, and eliminate the problems that we have and become an even greater country. We've been one of the greatest countries in the world, and we're in a crisis now, not only of the economy and that, but with these last 8 years, a destruction of the respect that America has always had. And I think Jean saw that, and in the lieutenant, he had this wonderful, it could have been any two lieutenants, but he made one black and one white. Dennis Hopper and this wonderful young man that I worked with, Don Marshall. And the girlfriend who quit college, took a leave from college to travel with her fiance to the South. And so they're both well-educated people, you know. And he's proud, the one thing he's proud of being a Marine. And they walk into this office, and the lieutenant, who's Gary Lockwood, has chosen them from different parts of the country on this very vital mission. And Don walks in from one door, and Dennis Hopper walks in from the other, and they don't see each other. And the lieutenant says, "You've met," and they turn, "No, sir," and they turn and look at each other, and they go for one another's throat. Turns out they're from the same southern town, and Dennis Hopper and his gang of kids had beat up on Don and taken his brand new bike away. And he had to get over that. His family moved north, but it had always simmered there. And my character was the leveling character for Don, because they were going up in the brig, you know, which is not what the lieutenant wanted. And so it was this wonderful thing. It's with this leveling voice that she had, and she said, "Are you he said, and all of his anger and hatred of this wonderful life that he had created for himself came to the fore when he saw Dennis Hopper. Excuse me, Dennis, from calling his youth, but his character, this white guy. And it all came back. And he had thought he had risen above it. And she tells him, in essence, you have to face who you are, of what they've done to you, what you have let that, because if not, you're no better than he is. And you don't know if he has faced that and is past it. You know, this is what, and she threatens to leave, you know, and somehow in that way, she reached him, and he had to come. It's almost like that movie with Portier and what, on the train where they're locked together, come out, white guy and Curtis, Tony Curtis. But it was that kind of examination of the human condition juxtapositioned on our life in this culture. that you're always fighting with it, because it hasn't gone away. It hasn't gone away. But what the successful bid to the President of the United States, the highest office in the land of one of the greatest countries in the world, proved that people were listening, people were facing, and I cannot tell you how many people, men, women of all cultures and all colors, come to me and have their own story, and it's like more now, greater now than then. And I'm sure it's because of the reruns and the 6 major motion pictures, but also because of our accessibility through the Star Trek conventions, which they never, and then that way the fans themselves never let it die, never let Gene's vision die. And I have had, and still today, young people, that looked like they did 30, 40 years ago, who come up to me and say some of the same things their mom, dads, uncles, aunts helped them grow up being, and it is one of my greatest. It became for me a liberation and my own odyssey from where I thought I was so civilized. And deal with my own inadequacies, my own anger, my own, and to put it inside that great big place called love. Can't survive. Can't survive. Gene Roddenberry was a complex, incredible man. In one way, he thought himself as just an ordinary man. And he had this idea and this attitude that was extraordinary, and it wasn't extraordinary to him. It was very simple. Stop this nonsense. We're all human beings. And we all have greatness, and we all have the ability to do greater things than we even think, and that's not amazing. And so it never occurred to him that this was visionary or anything. It's just, if he felt if he wrote it and he could get it out there, the millions of people would say, "Oh yes, that's right. Okay, society is changing. They're not going to indict me for believing in Darwin any longer or believing in God." And why is there a difference? If you believe in God, God made Darwin. If you believe in Darwin, he's facilitating and strengthening God's vision as far as I'm concerned. That we all have greatness and we have this power to think for ourselves. So, and to come to conclusions and to right the wrong conclusions if they don't work, if they hurt someone else, they're not good. It's not good. If it helps aggrandize yourself and someone else, hey, that's cool. That's really, yes, we were created by whomever, whatever circumstance to be our greatest, to shine back at one another and applaud your greatness as you believe in mine, and at the same time. All of these wonderful things are happening. And that's not extraordinary. It's not extraordinary to be extraordinary, to not be ordinary. That's not extraordinary. That's just our nature, God-given nature. That is our, was it written? or is it the evolutionary process? I think both. And Gene, so he was this incredible man who thought he was just ordinary and that he had a right to express his feelings and as he saw them and to give them to you for examination and make them exciting and make them event. And that included women whom he loved. and in many ways, people said, Gene was a sexist. And I said, and I answered once and said, yes, isn't that wonderful? And they thought I'm going, are you crazy? And I said, sexist has just become a good word. Because if he is, he's just made women in the most beautiful light that he can think of. And at the same time, that same woman has the same ability to think and to create and to go forth where no man or woman has gone before, and to lead and to and have, it's powerful, but it's a woman's power, it's a man's power. And to come together, that's what makes power. That's what makes beauty, the power of the universe. The universe is power. The universe is power. So let's not take power and make it a bad word. But if you misuse it, it's a bad word. If you misuse the universe power. So we're talking about how we use. And so when they told him, I think it was 20th or one of the studios, he could not write the original thing that he was writing about these people all equal, the women and equal to the man, the blacks, whites, yellows, browns, red. You meet them on equal footing according to their understanding of who they are in this universe. They said, Gene, the script is wonderful, but we can't sell it. America's not ready for it. Public's not ready for it. They won't be ready for it for 300 years. And Gene, the light bulb went on. Gene said, thank you. And he went home and wrote Wagon Train to the Stars. And he took it to Desilu. And they said they didn't like the title. And he said, well, Star Trek. And it became a living being. It was always, and just think about every episode of Star Trek, it was always the story. It was not about the technology, or we just assumed it. Remember, we weren't overwhelmed by the technology. We didn't question how that starship got up off the, we had 200 years, we know that. We accept the technology, we don't switch a bulb and the lights go on and go, wow. They did that with the first light, and then it was over. Then you switch it on, and the light goes on. And now you got to replace the light. It's very simple, And we still haven't learned how to use nuclear power safely, atomic power safely, but those are still gifts that we just don't know how to respect and to use it to the good of humankind. Gene Coon and Gene Roddenberry were closest of friends. I mean, I've never seen two men who could sit in a room and almost say nothing, and they're thinking the same thing, or start a sentence the other one finishes, that are in between, like twins. And they both had this sense of humor, this irony, that I've never seen two people share so much. Maybe comedy writers share that, or people, but, and so they trusted one another implicitly. And they were complicit in everything they do. Gene would bring an idea, Gene Coon was already into the first and then they're into this. Or Gene Coon would come and say, I was thinking about, and he'd list what he was thinking about, and the next day would be a script. Gene has, and everybody that he worked with was like that. The people that developed the so-called technology of how everything worked was science fiction is science fiction fiction predicated on scientific fact. And it becomes, of course, then the what if. And it's the same thing that Shakespeare did. It's the same thing that great writers and great thinkers have always done. They look at something that fascinates them and goes, what if this can go 30 miles an hour, what would lift it off the ground? And what kind of thrust would you need to then let it move in the air? And then what would you need to do to lose power or bring it back and come back on the ground safely and continue? And it's as simple as that. It's the great if. And science fiction is just the great if predicated on potential science fictional fact, science fact.
Sure. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I was just kind of wanted to ask you.
And if you look at it that way, it's easy. Now, Gene Coon also had a talent that Gene respected so highly. He had not only, this is going to be so nice to use. He had not only had the sense, he had the sensibility to take what Gene was thinking, and in that wise they were the same. I've never seen two men, two brains so intricately compatible and creatively. And they also had a ghastly sense of humor. They were always coming up with jokes, tricks on the cast, on their staff. And so you were always on your toes around them because they did it with straight face. And of course it would be hysterical. They were never malicious, but it would be just absolutely hysterical. But there were people who just, if you were the butt of the joke at that point. But if they were the butt of the joke because they did it to each other, they were in hysterics about it, And so those are the kind of men they were, and they surrounded themselves with men who, if not as creative as they, appreciated and supported them. They're waiting for the next shoe to fall, anxiously. Not true.
Tell me about that.
Was never true. It was never. He had his hand on. I didn't know there was something between Bill and Leonard, and maybe that when they resolved their problem with one another, as were the stars of the show, and something between Gene and the men. The couple of men, Bill and Leonard, that Leonard seemed to have successfully resolved. But I think that, you see, Gene, by his own admission, had a dual personality, and in Star Trek, he was Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock. And those were his characters. You see, and so he never let them deviate from what that balance that they stood on, that pedestal, that form that they stood on, of who they were. So no, Spock couldn't laugh like they did in the first pilot, and of course rightly so. The studio, the network hated it. But they loved the concept enough and believed it enough to do a second pilot. And the second pilot sold, and they took the first pilot and created a major pilot, sold that as the first show on the air, and that's when I came in. They recast the communications officer because I think Gene intended to do that all along, but figured he couldn't get away with it. And they hated the female lead, who was Majel Barrett, and had put this awful black wig on her with that beautiful mass of hair. And so Gene fought with them. He made a settlement with them, and you keep the alien and you get rid of the woman. So they were happy about that. However, he changed her hair to blonde, and she became Nurse Chapel. And they didn't know it until halfway through the first episode. On the air. I mean, the first episode, the first season. I think maybe the people didn't know it in the whole first season. The opportunities for Uhura were written. I was doing many of the scripts. They kept getting cut. And I will just keep my counsel on how that came about and who was really responsible for it. But Gene kept saying to me, because we still thought we had a 5-year mission. And if you recall, every once in a while there was a very, very important episode in which Uhura was pivotal. You know, Plato's stepchildren, where he did that's the first interracial kiss, and bang, there it was, and the trouble with tribbles and gamesters of Triskelion, and there were enough to establish Uhura as an important character, and Gene kept saying, just let me get done what I've got to get done. Because he couldn't do it all at once. He couldn't fight all the battles. And he appreciated that part of me. And of course, when I went back to him on Monday morning after having met Dr. Martin Luther King and told him what Dr. King said, this man, I never forget him sitting behind that desk and with this proverbial cigarette in his that he smoked like that, and I told him what Dr. King said, and he looked up at me, and I swear to God, tears came to his eyes, and he looked up at me. This 6'3" strong, hatchet-faced ex-motorcycle cop, fighter pilot, sat there in these tears. I never saw him cry ever, and he didn't cry. It was just tear came. He looked up at me, and I said, and as I said, so if you still want me to stay, I'll stay. And he looked up at me and he said, God bless Dr. Martin Luther King. Somebody knows what I'm trying to achieve. And so I put up with a lot of stuff. I was furious with him. We were through. We were on the last, and Bruce Geller they were best friends. I mean, our shows came on Mission Impossible and Star Trek came on side by side. The offices were right across from one another, and our studios were next to each other. So we were all friends, you know. And so now, I think the mission was over, or Bruce Geller's got another thing, and it came at the end of our 3-year mission. Maybe Gene was upset because we didn't get the 5 years, get to do the 5-year mission, and all the things that he wanted to do with all, because he really originally. We were the first ensemble cast of characters as equals, and in Star Trek. Mannix was the not Mannix. Mission Impossible was the next. So these were two groundbreaking shows. When the end of our season was, we're still shooting at this time, but it's only a matter of a few weeks, and it's a matter of a few weeks before they start Mannix. Bruce Geller loved my character, loved me as a character person. He used to say, "You remind me so much of my wife," and I'm going, I know he's not married to a black gal, but he was married to a Middle Eastern maybe or something. And when we met, I for one was just absolutely enchanted and complimented, because she was a real beauty. And she says to me, "I was so tired of hearing about you at home. I couldn't wait to meet you." It was like, and we adored each other, And so he had written this character when the studios wouldn't let Star Trek become, with the battle between Bill and Leonard, until they resolved that there would be 2 stars of the show. The major, because they were determined to keep the Hollywood image of the male star, maybe a female star, but she's next, to him, and then the supporting cast, But this was not what Gene intended, So, but they sold it and then they whittled away at it. So this is what I knew what he had intended. He was getting what he wanted in characters, if not in billing. But then, when they couldn't whittle away at anybody else, I was the likely character, because there were just incredible episodes written involving Uhura, and I got so that I wouldn't even read the script until all the rewrites came in. Because they'd send me the script, the original script, and I'd, ooh, and you start learning all these lines, and getting around it, I said, "Well, listen, I know how to say hailing frequencies open." and then I'd get a really good one, and I'm waiting for it to get chopped down, and it doesn't, it was very interesting, and you have to understand, this was the times. These were what we're talking about, just going into the mid-'60s. We were in the middle of the Cold War. We had the Vietnam War, which has come out of the Korean War, Vietnam War. You had the flower children who are saying, "Hell no, I won't go." You had the women's movement burning the bras, liberation. We were under the threat of every day of nuclear annihilation, I remember them talking about kids going under their desk, excuse me. And you had the civil rights movement. And you also, before you get to that, you have to think about the 2 superpowers in that Cold War, which each one, there was total destruction at their fingertips. That red button and the red phone. And somebody could push that button, when it almost happened with the Bay of Pigs. Okay, so level heads have to prevail. This is not the gunfight at the old OK Corral, So many of the episodes really dealt with that without saying, and without talking back about the craziness went on in the 19th, 20th century, you know. But it was examples. Let this be your last little battlefield. With two guys looked exactly alike. One side was black and one side was white. Brought it up to him, how can you be fighting each other exactly? How dare you say we're exactly alike? He's white on the wrong side. He's black on the wrong side. Until Great Kirk comes up with a mirror. It's sometimes stupidity is as simple as that. Look at yourself in the mirror. Tell me what you see. I believe that it's a redundant question, but a vital question. Exactly what I was saying. It became enduring because it was addressing everything that we are right in the middle of now. And right in the middle of that, as I was saying, was the civil rights movement. I mean, they're bombing people. We can annihilate ourselves, and there are human beings fighting for the right to walk down the street without getting off the curb when another person that doesn't look like them walks by, who demanding to go to a bathroom without having to look for the designated one for his color, to speak to someone civilly without being accused of being uppity or out of to have an education. All of our inalienable rights, and that's what everything boils down to. What are the inalienable rights of each and every human being? And what is the demand for the respect of those? And that's what it deals with on every level. On every level. Who are you? Who am I? To the degree that I handle myself in self-respect, you are then bound by all the ethics of dignity and life and breathing to respect that. I think that's the reason that people dress up is because it was so, it just begged to. It's like Carnival or Halloween, but it had a serious message with it. It also said by becoming cadets or Star Trek personnel, or, oh my God, the green gals on another planet are being, for the first time, you really had something more than it was in a comic book. You know, you really had something from from outside of yourself to think about another being from another world. And we're talking about not little green men and not invading people, but high intelligence. And sometimes not, and sometimes more, you know. And I thought it was very brilliant that Spock, coming from Vulcan, superior being, they also came with that was his arrogance, you know. And so you really have a melting pot with all of these ingredients in it, and with the proper spices and heat and control and serving of it, you have a universe. I mean, it's a palette that you can just keep painting on. And many people, millions of people, basically, the basic tenet of Star Trek, peaceful exploration, IDIC, that demand of infinite diversity and infinite combinations is what makes the universe beautiful and worth living in. Now, if you stop right there, it's everything. That alone just gives you everything. It says you now go forth and create in your own image and likeness, and any likeness that you could feel like you want to be. It also said that there was a book that came out at that time that I think had to have been a Star Trek fan. It's called You're Okay, I'm Okay. It kind of said it all, right? And I'm sure they were inspired by Iddick. Infinite diversity and infinite combinations. And aren't we all infinitely diverse? Even twins. Before Star Trek, not that there weren't any science fiction shows on, before, but there always were about invasions of the Martians, or how we're going to be careful. This was an embrace of the universe, and Star Trek. And I think it loosened his mind to if that can be the powers to create a vehicle to come to Earth, or for Earth to go, and there are all of these other marvelous planets and areas of the universe to go that are even being created off from those planets, then what about the next step? The mind. If we're only using, and this is genius level, what is it, 10% of our capability? What is going on with that other 80%? Can I fly? Is there some reason? That I know if I'm on a very high precipice, especially a building, and I leap over, I mean, look over, Freudian slip, I look over, I have this compulsion not to jump, to fly. I want to fly. I have always been fascinated with birds. And I'm not talking about getting in a can and taking off, and you can explain those, but and you call it an airplane. I don't have that. It's something about the freedom, and I think that now Tim Crean probably goes. She's gone nuts. She's taking it a little beyond the beyond, but he also has this respect of women, or not making a difference in that power building between women and men, but respecting that difference in women and respecting that difference in men. That's what we keep losing. We have to, when we come to the place in which we don't think of ourselves as less or better by virtue of gender or race or brain power or country or level of, then we're going to have we're going to have time to embrace possibilities that we're holding on to. So we're not flying because we want to, we'll lose our seat. We'll lose our place, like musical chairs, no. But I think that going back to heroes, Star Trek presented heroes. Star Trek presented heroes, and to me, heroes are not born. They are ordinary people who endure and overcome extraordinary situations and come out on the other end a better person and giving better for it. And that's a real hero. A father who goes to work every day and digs ditches or men's hearts. It's challenging, but he does that, one, for the challenge within himself, to prove, to grow, to make that self grow. Digging ditches, you grow strength, you have a respect for that ground. You know, you go far enough and that oil come out and knock you down. But you know you can use that. Taking it to the writing a great play, giving voice to great ideas. That takes power. That takes usage, using it constantly, making it grow so you can see further. Repairing a heart. I think I can change that child's face. She does not have to live with the distortion of her mouth. Now, how am I going to do that? And it's because we love each other. That father digs ditches, that father does, because he has his posterity, his children, his wife, his family, who, if he's lucky, love and admire him for it. It's something in us that we must do. It's that mother who bears fruit and teaches her young ones to respect one another. And if need be, she'll go out and dig that ditch and repair the heart. And it's that respect for each other's ability to do what you have to do, and to have the freedom and the right to answer that siren song within all of us that says, I can do that. Now, I'm not going to take off that building, because right now I don't know how to fly, but I have that, I feel I want to feel what it feels like to soar. And so you do it in other ways. I do it with my voice, I do it with my acting, I hope I do it with my words. I hope that I do it through love and respect of people that I come in contact with, and seeing the best of them as opposed to the worst. And when I see the worst, I want to go like this and give the best of me. So maybe they'll say, like a gentleman said to me, who gave me a hard time on Trek, not on set, and apologized to me 20 years later. He said, you were always a lady. I was not my best. He said, but I became better for it. I was stunned. And so sometimes you don't see it immediately. You don't seem to benefit from it immediately. But we are what we give. We are what we demand of ourselves. And as we give it freely, we benefit whether we know it or not. Whether it's right now, if I got a quarter and I want something for 20 cents, I can get 5 cents back, and I know I've got my value returned. But if I give 50 cents worth of that's a beautiful tie. I maybe I get it. Well, actually, I get it immediately because I get your smile. But I'm trying to be simplistic about a complex concept, I think.
I'm seeing now why Gene riding behind you. You're all philosophers at heart. Really. Well, I just kind of have one last question. We
could sit up and talk for hours, which is why I respect him so much. Yeah. I actually, because of that, and for other reasons, in doing my mental research for who Uhura was, I actually I didn't even tell Gene for about a year or so, And he started laughing, and he said, "Why do you think I had you read for the role of Spock?" I actually, within the mind of Uhura, imaged herself and Spock as her mentor. She was the only one he could teach the Vulcan lair. They have a mind very similar, and they creeped into various episodes. When he asks her, I don't remember the episode, when they're having a problem with the ship, and Uhura is underneath it, I'm thinking she's got to repair some complicated wires and so forth to save the ship. And it is the captain's off on one of his adventures, and Mr. Spock has the command, and he tells me, and he comes to Miss Uhura, "How are we coming along there?" And she says, I mean, she knows the extent of the pressure she's under, and she says, I'm not sure." And he says, "If I didn't think you could do it, I would not have asked," you know. And of course, I could just hear the music, da da dee dee dee, da, you know. So I did. It was a part of a blooper in one of them, because they've got this is the camera on me, and Spock is, and then I turn back to do my work, and because I've got his belief, faith in me, and I'm going to do it. It's like taking off a bomb, dismantling a bomb on someone, and they're watching you. So I'm there, and the camera's right there, you know. And so when I'm doing it, and he says, "I wouldn't have asked you if I didn't believe you could do it." And I turned back and I said, "He loves me. He really loves me." And of course, everyone we were all trying to break up Leonard, who always kept his Spock. And this, when I turned, they said cut, and I turned and looked at Leonard, was going, he had a script, he's going, it looks like looking at me, you know. He's looking at me, and I saw a smirk. People that the press likes to focus on, and they name them derogatorily Trekkies. The Trekkers, and Trekkers named themselves Trekkers, the fans decided to co-opt that. And now they call themselves proudly Trekkies, you know. But these are people from every walk of life. I mean, from the most brilliant, and that IDIC, infinite diversity, infinite combinations, has brought people out of their constrainment of being seen in public, people in wheelchairs. I mean, Star Trek brought them out in ways that they've become creative in ways that they thought they would not ever be acknowledged. And writers, photographers, they're just incredible people, because Star Trek gave them a vision of themselves that was beyond what they thought they were capable of enjoying in this life. The restrictions that society put them. I remember as a child, a person in a wheelchair came in, and you became uncomfortable in a restaurant, you know, and you became uncomfortable, and people looked at them, you know. Now they have attitudes. I go up and talk with them, and other what we would call afflictions, they are liberated from. They said, "This is the affliction, not me." I love it. I love it, and it has certainly given me another perspective of myself. I still love my work. I still love my art. I still love the joy of singing. I'm remounting my one-woman show once again, and I'm rewriting it. And I've discovered areas of myself that have to go in this after all these years. You see, it's become a totally other kind of vision of me, exploration of where Nichelle was then and why. And I'm having a wonderful time. It scares me, because stuff keeps creeping in. And whenever I write, characters take over. And I really sometimes have to stop and like, who's the creator here? But I will always be grateful for the experience, not just the job, but the opportunity to create and to discover a lot more than I thought I knew, and directly through being involved with Trekdom. And not only that, I like them.